introduction first. Just a couple of things here.
Okay, I'm very pleased and honored, in fact, to be able to introduce Tia Anderson to us today. Many of you have seen Tia before and know her from all of her works, but just a little brief introduction to her. She has a BA in architecture and then an MA in gap year schooner work. And she came to Camden in 1995, traveling with a group of about 8 other friends from Key West to Camden on the Appledore. And so that was her introduction. And then upon deciding that Camden was going to be her new hometown, as a number of these young people, when I first moved here, some of my great new young friends that I got to meet were former Appledore, Roseway crew members who got here and they loved it, and that's our own form of economic development. All the schooners coming here, not only do they bring us travelers in the summer, but they also bring us nice new young people who have they're just great people to be with. And so anyway, her first job, that real job with following her BA work, was with Stephen Smith Architects. And then she became the first paid person on the home Habitat for Humanity staff, but also the first executive director of Habitat for Humanity. John Sherman, Harvey Rudisil, Ed Ziklis, Roy Salzman were all Camden Rotarians at the time engaged with Habitat for Humanity, helping when Tia became the first paid employee and executive director. And while Tia did not really have an arranged marriage, she did have an arranged introduction. Tia and her little Shih Tzu used to walk down Dillingham Point right in front of our house. And Sandy, my deceased wife, and Derek's deceased mother, would frequently go out, and Jim Bowditch can be a witness to this, and talk to whoever was walking down Dillingham Point. And so she went out and met Tia, and then we began going to the Frogwater Cafe, and Tia was waitstaffing there. And so one day we decided to bring Derek with us with the distinct intention to introduce her and Tia, or to Derek and to Tia at the Frogwater Cafe. And so we did, and 3 years later, they were married. So she did have an arranged introduction. And Tia and Derek have 2 children, 17-year-old Kira and 20-year-old Cole. And as I've learned to become, not Richard Anderson, whatever I used to maybe do, but I'm Richard Anderson, Cole's grandfather. And Tia has, instead of being Habitat for Humanity executive director, is oftentimes, oh, you're Cole's mother. And so Cole gets in the press all the time. And so everybody knows us as Cole's something. And little Kira has been a great one. And she's lived with all that fame of her older brother and just has her own self and has her own identity. And it's all worked out very well. But today, Tia is going to talk to us. First, we'll ask her to talk a little bit about, we know she wants to talk about what's Habitat doing, what's going on with it, and how might we Rotarians help a little bit more than we're currently helping the Habitat for Humanity. But then I asked Tia, I said that, the club is involved in economic development, and we see housing as one way to support economic development in our region and make it more accessible to more workers. And so I asked her, with her insights, with her experiences, what could she help us understand a little bit better as we move forward, trying to help with the housing issues in the area beyond what Habitat for Humanity does. And so she can describe how what she does is different than some of the things we're thinking about. So Tia, hearty welcome to Tia. Thank you.
My apologies, Rich and Tia. Learning curve. Don't let the wires get tangled. Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. So these are a new addition, probably since the last time I was here. Thank you for having me. Thank you for the introduction. So I just want to give you a brief update on the projects. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I know, I'm so bad at that part, but I will do my best. So I wanted to just update you on what Habitat's been working on in recent years. And I think, will this let me, maybe I use the clicker. There we go. So this is Philbrick Commons, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. It is a 12 small house subdivision on the north end of Rockland. And as I was going through and creating this, it ties in very well with what I'm going to speak to in the second half, is how, parts of what we're doing in the projects that we're doing now, the issues we're facing with them, and how it plays into the affordable housing crisis we're currently in. So this project was originally a workforce housing development. In the late 30s. It was built by Eugene Philbrick, and they were on septic systems that failed over time. And so we saw this as an opportunity to redevelop and revitalize this neighborhood where workforce housing once existed. Our goal here is to address a diverse demographic. We have some elderly, some young single parents, some individuals middle-aged, change of life situations. But again, it's a reinvestment in a neighborhood. And the municipal engagement by the city of Rockland allowed us to rebuild by supplying a sewer line for us. So that obviously adds to the affordability of the project. And this is just the site plan for the development. You can see the 12 houses. There are two models, 1 bedroom and 2 bedroom. We mirrored them. We staggered them on site to make it a little less homogeneous. They're aesthetically pleasing, but it doesn't, when you drive in, it is much more welcoming. And there will be a community green space in the center part. We made a long cul-de-sac to allow for them to gather and enjoy each other. They all have front porches to be engaging as well. This is 7 Willow Street. This is a rehab project we're currently doing around the corner. It happens to be in my neighborhood, which I'm very excited about. The town had put out an RFP, and there were several folks interested in the property, but they ended up gifting it to Habitat so that we could redevelop it into affordable housing. And the idea being that we would make sure it stayed affordable into perpetuity. So that is the goal for that house. And believe it or not, as you drove by, I know many of the neighbors were astounded to realize that it could be salvaged. It is actually, the bones of the house are really great. There were no roof leaks when it was abandoned, if you will. They had recently put a new roof on. So it was our good fortune that it wasn't in such disrepair. We did not have to deal with any NIMBYism in the neighborhood, which was pleasant and wonderful, as you can imagine. So this is a key aspect, is the fact that we can, do something in an existing neighborhood that is a wonderful neighborhood. It's walkable to town and services and, part of the community, and it had sat vacant for 10 years. So the neighborhood was quite excited about this development. This is our currently a project in the works in the planning phases. I'm sure many of you have driven around Rockland and seen the Save Firefly Field signs. It is probably so far one of our, I guess we've received the most opposition from abutters to this project. And honestly, they're worried about us developing wetlands, which there's very minimal impact happening to the wetlands as we have this planned. Our hope is that we can get the community to rally around the need for this. It is both, let me just advance to the next slide and I'll tell you. So this is going to be it's a collaborative project where we will have 6 equity builders, which will be these small 500, slightly over 500 square foot cottages. And they will be for folks that are transitioning and establishing themselves in a new job or what have you. They're rentals. They're not intended to be long-term, but whatever the need is for the client it's serving. The equity builders will be managed by Knox County Homeless Coalition, who is one of our collaborative partners. And along with those will be 2 duplexes, 2 and 3 bedroom units that will house families. They will also be rentals that are affordable. And then we'll have 3 habitat houses and the potential for possibly 1 or 2 more going up the hill. So during this project, or the planning for it anyway, we received grant funds from Maine Housing, who is our other collaborative partner. They had approached the Knox County Homeless Coalition and Midcoast Habitat to do this type of pilot project. One that added both services, workforce development, and rental and home ownership in the same community. We identified this property as a possibility because of its walkability, the mixture of the neighborhood that we'd be developing in, potential access down the road for transportation. And so this became, this we purchased with funds from that grant, and we're in the subdivision approval process. So again, NIMBY is strong at the moment, but I have, a positive hope for what the outcome will be. Ultimately, I'm hoping that the neighbors realize that we are not putting those that are in need of mental health services or drug addicts or thieves or, their opinion of what the clients are that we're serving with this community is wrong. So with some education, we hope to change that. And this is a rehab. Well, sadly, it was intended to be a rehab by the Community Development Corp in Rockland. In St. George, but it turned out it couldn't be salvaged and it had sat too long. So they asked if we would partner with them, and we bought it for back taxes. We demoed the house and are in the process of the application process of selecting a partner family to rebuild a new house on this property on the St. George Peninsula. So what's happening in our community? So gentrification, displacement, we all know there's a housing crisis. It's not new to us, but it seems to be new to many. As a result of the pandemic, people having to shelter in place, we found out that, well, many people didn't have that opportunity to be in a safe, decent situation and be housed appropriately. So stable, affordable housing, it's central to the health of individuals, families, and our communities. And I think we're seeing that with lack of workforce and just affordability in our neighborhoods and the ability to, really have a diverse community that is thriving for everyone. So it is important that we can develop a plan that gives the equitable access to benefits brought by the improvements we've made in our community. So when I moved here, Rich, I came here in 95. It looked entirely different, Rockland, for instance. But we've built this really vibrant, wonderful art-based community, among other things. And in the process, we have in some ways gentrified our community and displaced those that were able to occupy affordable homes or rentals in our area. So location is key to affordable housing. Self-determination, folks have to have opportunity and to make good choices. And if they're desperate and they're being evicted and there's nowhere else to go, there's a good chance they're not making the right choices that are healthy choices for their family and their well-being. So it's important that we make sure we establish a variety of homes to enable people to prosper. So this is really the crux of it. We have a shrinking supply of affordable housing, a growing housing demand. And in current times, we've seen a lot of influx of folks from away. We've seen people taking advantage of the Airbnb. short-term rentals. And we found that we have limited enforcement and limited protections in place. So we're coming at it now from a different angle. We have to change our policies and the way we operate in terms of our housing in our area. It's going to take time, obviously, and it's going to be a multifaceted approach for sure. To be successful, really, you can come up with a multitude of ideas, but there is definitely, with rental and property increased values, it amplifies sort of segregation and instability. And that's what we're seeing now with a lot of our residents, or those trying to stay in the area, our elderly, young folks that want to work here but have nowhere to live. So who needs affordable housing? There's a lot of affordable being thrown around. And really, it comes down to housing for everyone. Everybody needs it. We need it at all levels. And sadly, the private market tends to provide affordability to higher income households. When they come shopping in town, they're looking for the best deal, the best bang for their buck sometimes. And we don't, prioritize some of the other levels in our community. So understanding the dynamics of neighborhoods and developing customized solutions for different neighborhoods. So Talbot Avenue, for instance, in Rockland, where we took a look at the neighborhood and the property we were going to build and develop, and found that it worked for a multitude of reasons because of what already existed and what we could also add. And local resources tend to have more flexibility and can be used for those not served by federal and state assistance. So affordable housing many times referred to housing that was subsidized. So there was some sort of federal or state subsidy that came into place, and that allowed, for folks living in poverty to establish themselves in a living situation. But locally, in our local municipalities, we have the opportunity to now serve those that maybe aren't subsidized in other ways. So I just wanted to throw this up to give people an idea, because I don't know, we deal every day in people's finances, but what it really looks like. So if you have a minimum wage worker working 40 hours, that's $19.44 is their gross monthly income. If you annual income of 23, you can read this, but we look at that 30% of income for housing, because that's the standard. You shouldn't pay more than that for your housing costs, because that is, you're basically cost burdened. And as that number creeps up, the issues you face dealing with healthcare, childcare, food insecurity, all have, that has an effect on all those other things. And then the 43% is debt to income. So if you're looking to, move into a housing situation, but you have debt, whether it be education, medical, credit card debt, just other needs that you establish debt because of, that's that safe number, that a healthy number, if you will. So these are hard numbers to meet currently. We see it all the time. We see folks that are debt burdened and are paying more than 50%. I think right now it's 1 in 8 households in Maine pay more than 50% of their income on housing. So when you look at the Knox County facts, you see a median income of $60,000. So that house price that's affordable for a $60,000 income earner is $224, but the median house price in our area is $265. So their income needs to be $10,000 more roughly to be able to afford to live here or to buy a house here. So that 59% of households can't afford in Knox County. That's staggering. Rental, it's a similar situation. It's 62% of renters are unable to afford the median 2-bedroom rental in our area. So the reasons for that, I'm sure you have all heard. It's price increase, short-term rentals. We've had issues with folks not wanting accessory dwelling units, stuff like that. So there are definitely ways that we can address the situation. And this is just, I wanted you to just be able to see, what those numbers look like on paper. And that's, that is a one income household there. Obviously multiply it by 2 for, the minimum wage is going up. But there's definitely, we fall short of the mark for income versus our housing costs in this area. So as I've said, there's no single solution that addresses the complex home affordability challenges of our community, but what can we do? So we've been doing it. We've been constructing affordable housing for 30 years. One house a year for many years. It was great. And the folks did a good job. 12 years ago, almost 12 years ago, Habitat hired their first staff, which was myself, part-time. And, what we realized is we can't work hard enough or fast enough to solve the issue. But we're doing our best. And we've obviously increased our impact over the last 12 years, but there's so much more to be done. So there's key points, increasing supply and preservation of affordable housing. How do you do that? There's the conversation going about establishing a housing trust fund, which is a great idea. I think that is something that could really be successful for our area. It's important that I think that it go countywide, not municipality to municipality. That is an option. But I see Knox County, that's the area we serve, and I see no reason why it wouldn't make sense to do that across the county, because the smaller municipalities don't have the time necessarily to devote to that, to establishing something like that, but the need is there and they could definitely benefit from that. We also have the, obviously housing bonds. You can tie them to other needs in the community, whether it be education, that, sometimes the push-pull, we sometimes have to give a little on the affordable housing side to tie it into something that sort of mutually goes hand in hand and would benefit both parties. There's long-term affordability. That's key. So everything we're developing now, we are maintaining long-term affordability on. So how we do that through ground leases, covenants, nonprofit ownership is another option. We turn our homes over, but again, if Knox County Homeless Coalition owned these rentals, they would maintain them and carry them into perpetuity as well. We also do shared equity and the right of first purchase. So any entity involved in establishing affordable housing or developing affordable housing can put these components into place to make that property affordable for whether it be 30, 50, 90 years. Obviously, the longer the better. Then there's advocacy. That is a constant. It needs to happen. It needed to happen a long time ago. I think a lot more people are looking at that and focusing on, well, how do we change, create new legislation, make it make sense for the areas we're serving. And so I think that is a big thing, and you can do it at all levels, federal, state, local. I feel as though, in our area, there's a lot of relationship building that goes on, and advocating can be fairly easy in this arena. So I just encourage, whether it be Rotarians do it or, school kids do it, it makes sense for everybody to play their part in that. Possibly establishing a county housing alliance, something that, that would, you pull together the advocates, the stakeholders, education people, healthcare workers, government officials, and get everyone together so that you're all coming from the same place, establishing a platform, if you will, so that whatever programming is put into place or strategy to address the housing issue is done cohesively and sensibly. And I think leaving people out of the mix, this all plays in together. It has a hand in a healthy community, having all of these areas, working from the same place. And perhaps having an affordable housing summit, which could get everyone, again, on the same page. A multifaceted approach is the only thing that's going to be successful. There's just so much need. One solution isn't going to do it. So I think if we, level the playing field, everybody realizes where we're at and where we need to get, and let's come up with opportunities where perhaps, the Rotarians play a part in the workforce housing development, or, workforce development in general. That, that's an opportunity. So equitably increase access to credit. So Habitat has spoken in recent times. Our finance committee, we're going to look at more financial education. So not just educating our homeowners. We require first-time home buyer of all our home buyers, but any of our applicants that come to us, and we decline them for any number of reasons. We identify what those are. Usually it's based on credit, debt, etc. But we want to give people the opportunity to learn and better their situation, and then perhaps return back to us for that opportunity again in the future. So financial education is very important, and putting support programs in place for people to be successful. So we never just put someone in a home, whether it be in a collaborative project for rental or home ownership. We don't put them in a house and walk away, because that's a recipe for disaster sometimes, but definitely not for success. There are a handful that may be fine, but there's a lot that goes into home ownership, responsibility, just getting your feet under you and establishing yourself to prosper. So the programming goes a long way. Down payment assistance is another credit piece that we could expand on, as far also tax relief, homestead exemption. When our homeowners buy a home, we remind them about the homestead exemption. There's tax abatement. There's all sorts of programs that you don't hear about or necessarily know when you own a home, but it's important for someone who's living, on a tight means to have the opportunities that are available to them. There's also property tax circuit breakers that, could come into play. And I know I keep using Rockland as an example, but it can come into play anywhere. Capping annual increases in taxes, in property taxes, max tax levels for certain incomes. I just think it's important to balance. You can't just build affordable housing and expect that that's going to be all you need to do to be successful and to solve the issue at hand. So optimizing land use for affordable homes. Zoning reform is crucial. We're seeing it in our projects, subdivision development. We've asked for contract zones. Philbrick was a contract zone, and Talbot Avenue was awarded a contract zone. So and they're not big asks. We wanted to develop homes that were less than 750 square feet, but the zone wouldn't allow it. In my opinion, you should never be able to limit the square footage of what someone calls home. Somebody's comfortable in 3,000 square feet, somebody's comfortable in 550 square feet, but at no point is it anyone else's, I think, right to say that works or that doesn't work. And to limit it, 750 square feet, who came up with that and why? But that was, in these zones that we want to build in, that's the number that was set there. So, so we went and asked for 500 or greater, and we were able to do that. We have the houses at Philbrick are 660 square feet and 860 square feet, roughly 1 and 2 bedrooms. So other incentives for development are a good idea for other developers, not just, Habitat. We don't need the incentive. We know why we're doing it and we need to do it, but they don't need to, sometimes there are, for-profit developers, there would be incentives built in. That would be great. Reduce barriers to development. So minimizing the dwelling size we just discussed, lot size. That is an issue in a lot of, sometimes you've heard of cluster housing. That can be a way to deal with lot size parameters and multiple dwelling units within one lot. It's a density issue. Also setbacks. We've asked for road frontage. Sometimes it's 80 feet of road frontage that's required in a zone. or we've asked for it to be reduced to 60 so that you can have, we were allowed to have 12 houses on Philbrook because we were allowed to shrink the road frontage requirement. And on Talbot Avenue, we're looking to build so to not impact the wetlands. So we want to bring the setbacks, the rear setbacks or the front setbacks closer to the road so that it gives us more distance. It makes sense. So these are things that we have to ask for, and it lengthens the process. And the next one is reform the planning process. If we make these adjustments and, across the board, we say, okay, for affordable housing, this is what the process will look like. It will be simplified. It will be streamlined. It will just be easier to get the job done and get the units developed. Then, I'm 18 months in to Talbot Avenue and I still haven't broken ground. That's for contract zone and subdivision approval and now DEP permitting. So there are ways we can streamline and make the process more efficient. So it's really crucial to the success of being able to develop what we need to develop. So ensure access to and development of communities of opportunity. Obviously, we all are aware how important collaboration is, that we do what we do best and you do what you do best. And together, when we come together and make it happen, that's just an efficient way to operate. We don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. I mean, as you know, I know there's been talk about, mimicking the Island Trust, Housing Trust. There are obviously other housing trusts that have been successful that certainly to pull from, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of great opportunity out there that we can mimic. Collaborating with businesses. We know Habitat, we have found that over the last 5 years, working with the Knox County Homeless Coalition, Maine Housing, the municipalities, Town of Camden, City of Rockland, Town of Warren, St. George, we work with their Community Development Corp. We start the conversation. In some areas, we can just facilitate because we don't have the bandwidth. In other areas where we're able to actually do the construction part or put two people together that can have an impact or make an impact. We also have a prison program. It was one meeting I met with a deputy and they talked about their construction certification online program. And we said, well, why don't we give them hands-on training? So they now frame our walls, they build our sheds, they built our site office so that, they get the training, which, for whatever the timing is and that works for them. Plus they're getting their certification and it benefits us, on the development side. So when COVID hit, we actually still had production. We were limited on volunteers and we just brought trailers full of walls over to Philbrook and we're able to put them up and get things rolling. So working with the schools, our faith partners, all the collaboration makes sense. It makes the job easier. It makes it, more beneficial for the community as a whole. And obviously we spoke to workforce development. I know that is, it's key when you want all our community to be diverse and having young folks be able to come here, work here, raise families here and live affordably and happy, in our communities. It makes sense. It's great for the health of our community. So having a workforce and engaging our businesses to realize, okay, so even, if a developer is coming in to do a commercial development and there's going to be a business there and they're going to want people to come work for them, well, perhaps they pay into some sort of affordable housing fund that allows, the development of workforce housing so that there's a return on that investment for them as well as our community. So it really comes down to housing for everyone. I think just being able to, whether they're single parent families, the typical, whatever that looks like, unit, or elderly wanting to stay in the area who have worked in the area for years, their kids are grown. There's no reason we can't accommodate a diverse mix of housing in this community. We have, an old housing stock. We can certainly do rehabs, as you've seen. We have a variety of projects going on, and there's no shortage of opportunity we're seeing. You know, Habitat, our biggest thing is funding. It's a constant. You know, I could fundraise all day long, and I would never have enough money to do all that we need to do. But I intend to. So we're just going to keep at it. And the way, you know, Rotary has supported us in the past is through not only financially, but volunteers. The West Bay Rotary volunteers with us once a month on Saturdays. I invite you to do the same. Certainly anytime. Individuals, you can come as a group, you can come as individuals. We have regular volunteers that work with us every week, 1 or 2 days a week typically. So that's probably the primary is, you know, obviously it's funding and volunteer, because that's what our program is based on. So this speaks to what stable housing provides. It's not just a roof over their heads. It's stability for families, a sense of dignity and pride, health, physical safety and security, increase of educational and job prospects and performance. That is a given. We have seen it time and time again with our families and their children just really excelling in school. And the parents being able to stick with their jobs, you know, it is, and grow in positions within their the business they're working in. It's been a great, you know, very rewarding part of our work. And I think, you know, I moved here in '95, fell in love with the community, and over the years have just really grown to appreciate the value of community. And that's why I do the work I do. But engaging people in the community and having them value the place they live and make a difference in their day-to-day lives, I think is crucial. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Restore in all of this. We had our best year ever this past year. Obviously, everyone was home doing projects, but it covers more than our overhead, and the additional goes into our programs. So donation pickups have increased. We do it twice a week now. We went from once a week, twice a week. We do still rent a truck. Someday we may have our own, but right now it's cost effective to just rent one. And so it's been a great success. So join us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just because of time, could I ask that we do questions and answers after the next couple of things? Thank you. And I need to ask that we do the raffle.
The pot is at $382. Jeff, help me out.
Last four, 8510.
8510. Hey. Five of hearts.
Oh, all right. So, Matt, are you set? Excellent.
Okay, we'll be quick here. First of all, I'm sure all of you have your Rotary pins. If you don't, put a buck in. I'll trust you to do that. Got to get back into that habit. And before I get into my things, I'm just going to tell everybody, save the date, June 17th, 2022. Jazz in June, the Brubeck Brothers and the Frank Vignola Trio at the Opera House. So tickets aren't on sale yet, but you might want to put it in your calendar. Okay, so today I am Sergeant at Arms, but just for today only, I'm going to become General at Arms. Self-promotion is key. And before that, I want to tell you that Bruce Cole was right on because his invocation revolved around Colin Powell. And I did a little research on Colin. I too admired the man, if not all of his politics. So real quickly, this table here, Colin's middle name. Okay, I'm going to give you the answers, but you go, oh, a buck. That would be Luther. Died 84 years old, born in 1937 in the South Bronx. Went to CCNY and joined ROTC and became a second lieutenant upon graduation. Okay. He was the Secretary of State. Any idea what number Secretary of State was in the history of our country? This would be that table right there. Given Graham's grown, I figure that's a good one. Or the years that he served as Secretary of State would be okay too. Okay, well, get the bucks out. It was 2001 to 2005, and he was the 65th Secretary of State. Okay, here's another one. He was 35 years a professional soldier. He served in Vietnam, including the investigation into the tragedy at My Lai. He was also in the Panama invasion and the Gulf invasion. He wrote a very famous paper regarding those incidents. Anybody know the name of that paper? Back table there. Very famous, used all the time now. It's really, you could get it pretty quickly. It's called the Powell Doctrine. And it limits the use of American military action based on a series of criteria in terms of security for the country and so on. And given what he was in, Vietnam, Gulf War and Panama invasion, you can understand why he probably said, you know, I think we need to figure out why we're doing these things. Okay, this table, real easy. He was a general. How many stars? Okay, you got that right. Brilliant, 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 I must say. I think I'm going to go pretty quickly to happy and sad dollars here. Anyway, General Powell passed away, as you know, recently at 84 years old, and had presidential aspirations at one time and then just convinced himself not to do it. He had support. As you remember, there was a huge groundswell of support for General Powell, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. And part of that is because he was a professional military man, and it's too much ambiguity in politics, I think. He was used to rules. Okay, happy sad dollars. Yes, right over there, Jeff. Bring the bucket. Bring the bucket.
Bring the bucket. Okay, happy dollar for our speaker. It's finally nice to meet Cole's mother. Happy dollar for any meeting infractions I may have done or violations to the four-way test in the last week. And then 5 happy dollars. I'll go quickly for the Nut Committee. It's a pleasure to work with this committee. You need to spend 2 hours on the street corner with Bob. You will meet everybody in town. He will extract the life history of any visitor that has ever come through the corner of French and Braun. It's amazing. In the meantime, I'm just trying to get money, and he has developed a full-blown relationship. It's unbelievable. And then lastly, anybody sign up with me on well, it's Clark. I thank you. There's $1 for that. And just remember, every nut that we sell in the next few weeks, there's fewer nuts we have to sell in the middle of December when it's cold and frozen out there. So just think about that. If you have to buy a dozen bags of nuts yourself, feel free.
Any other happy and sad dollars? Thank you, Jeff. Or online as well.
I'll do a 5 happy dollars for being Tia's father-in-law, not grandfather, father-in-law.
That's good.
I'll take your money.
I'll give a happy dollar to have people like Jeff on the Nut Committee, and a sad dollar because we have 2 open slots for Saturday yet. So 3 to 5. So I'm hoping that the two folks will sign up. We want to, as Jeff said, we want to get these nuts sold while it's warm.
Happy $2. Nice to meet Derek's wife. And Friday, I head south for the cold part of the year. And I'll see you guys back next May.
Awesome. Other happy and sad dollars?
I'll throw in $2 happy for Tia. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I too have a happy dollar for Tia, and I should have read this before happy and sad dollars, but the quote of the day today is happiness never decreases by being shared. So good thought for the day. Jim.
$2 happy for Tia. Thank you very much for coming. And as a personal donator to the Restore, they were terrific when they came to the house. So it was wonderful. And guess what? We didn't downsize enough. We still have a ways to go before we fit into the cottage at Quarry Hill.
I also would like to do $5 happy for Tia and Habitat for Humanity in the Restore. Many of you know I keep disappearing to go down to Virginia to help my mother-in-law move into a retirement community and trying to empty her house. And other communities are nowhere near as organized as Tia's organization is to take donations like that. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Clark's taking money out of the basket. That's got to be worse. Just saying. Anybody else happy, sad dollars? Okay, well, I'm not going to ring the bell because hopefully Tia can come up and answer questions for people that who have questions. Good. Tia, why don't you come up and see if we have questions? Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
You talk about equity builders that are rentals, and I would like to understand what that means.
So we didn't actually coin the term, but there was we met with a woman from Detroit who was developing her version of equity builders. She was a minister in Detroit, and basically what happens is the folks pay whatever the rental fee is, and it could be $1 a square foot, it could be less, but we take a portion of those funds and hold them back. So it's almost like a forced savings. So they're building equity, we hold it, and when they decide to move out into the community into another affordable option or market option, then they take that with them. So it could be their first, last, and security. So they're building equity, but we force them to do so. Sure. Yes.
When you're working with the local planning boards and towns on the zoning and are they working with those changes only because these projects are subsidized through state or federal, or are these projects or these attempted changes in the zoning applicable to non-subsidized workforce housing?
It's applicable to non-subsidized. So basically, 10 years ago, I started having conversations with the city of Rockland about development and options, opportunity. And we can make these adjustments at a local level if you have, I say, the right people in place. You never want the wrong people in place, but it sort of has to be like a progression, I guess, when you get the right people in the seat at city council or the planning board, listening and understanding the issues at hand and their willingness to create contract zones or do zoning reform or, discuss, okay, well, why was this ever put in place in the first place? And it is a barrier. And how can we eliminate it or adjust it so that we allow opportunity? So it's not, it could be subsidized or not subsidized, that, it's just at a local level what our municipal governments will deal with. Sure.
You mentioned finance education. Are there examples of how is it finance education? Who's doing the finance education? How is that being done?
So, well, we have a relationship with Allen Agency, and we have some of their folks on our finance committee. So they've agreed that we're going to set up, and again, like I said, we have conversations with our homeowners. We set up budgeting when they purchase a house, but the idea that we can sit with applicants and offer them an opportunity, maybe it's a group of 3, or maybe it has to be individual depending on the case, but we can do it monthly. So our finance committee will meet with folks on a regular basis. So we'll offer it almost as a class type of situation.
Yeah, so there are some ways, points to make. So this is sort of like a curriculum.
Yeah.
So if a group of Rotarians wanted
Right,
to
if you
do
wanted to
something,
do that,
you've
that
got
would
a
be a
curriculum.
great-
All you need is people to do it.
Exactly,
Okay.
yes.
Hi, Kia. Thanks for your presentation today.
Thank
You mentioned a couple of times keeping at least certain of these houses affordable over
Mhm.
time. And how do you do that?
So we have a right to first purchase. So anything we build and sell, if the homeowner chooses to sell it down the road, they come to us first. And we typically would buy it back. Going forward, we probably will always buy it back. It wasn't always the way, it was prior, but we build houses to an energy efficient standard, low maintenance, all those things that play into wanting to, keep it in the affordable housing market. There's ground leases where the nonprofit or an entity can hold the land, hold ownership of the land. That's another way to do it. And they just lease the actual structure. You can do shared equity models, which we do along with our right to first purchase. We hold a silent second on our mortgages, as you know, and that allows folks to stay in their home, but when they're ready to move and sell, they only get a portion of the equity. So after, basically at no point when they sell a Habitat home, either on the open market, if they were to, 50% of the equity comes back to us. It's a pay it forward model. So basically when they're graduating from our program, that would be the situation. Any other questions? Hi.
Yeah, Tia, on your rental housing properties, how do you establish what the rent levels are? Do you just go to a straight 30% of income? And how do you subsidize the gap in there if there is one?
So Habitat does not deal in rentals.
Yep.
It's a collaboration. So that would be held by, whoever was doing it, Knox County Homeless Coalition.
Yeah.
So they would set it by, a standard. It could be, according to the affordable HUD numbers that we get for, 30% based on income. That's typically a good guideline, but then obviously you can back down from there and subsidize up to whatever degree you want to. So Habitat in our model, we subsidize. I'll give you an example, which is extreme, but we just had an appraisal done with our most recent house we sold last week. And the appraisal came in at $225,000 for a 2-bedroom house. That's 850 square feet. So clearly we don't sell the house at that. It's a nice, bonus, but, we had an opinion of value done on the house outside of the inflated market, if you will, and it was about $185,000. The affordability for this partner family and homeowner was $162,000. So we subsidize the difference between that 162 and 185, which we believe to be real numbers.
Sure.
So
Great. Well, thank you for the time.
you're welcome.
Any further questions? Any questions on Zoom? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I have a